The rain poured heavily outside as a man stood near the entrance of a grand hotel. His jacket soaked. His hands trembling from the cold. He was no stranger to hardship. But tonight, desperation had driven him to do something he never imagined, approach the most powerful man in the country. Inside the lavish banquet hall, former President Donald Trump was surrounded by admirers. The golden chandeliers casting a warm glow over the polished marble floor. The man took a deep breath, stepped forward, and with a mix of courage and hesitation, he asked, "Mr. Trump, can you give me $1? For a brief moment, the room fell silent. Then, Trump looked at him, his expression unreadable. What he said next would leave everyone, including the man, completely stunned. Trump leaned back slightly, eyeing the man in front of him. The room remained silent, the weight of the moment settling over the onlookers. His expression was unreadable. Was it amusement? Annoyance? Curiosity? No one could tell. Then, in his signature voice, he said, $1. Just one. You know, most people ask for millions. But you're asking for a single dollar? He chuckled, shaking his head. The man swallowed hard. He hadn't planned for this. He had no witty response. No rehearsed speech, just the raw desperation that had driven him here. He straightened his posture, trying to hold his ground. Yes. Just $1. Trump paused. He reached into his suit pocket, pulled out a crisp $100 bill, and held it up between two fingers. You see this? He asked. The man nodded. Then, to everyone's shock, Trump suddenly ripped the bill in half, letting the pieces flutter to the ground. Gasps filled the room. The man's heart pounded in his chest. What kind of game was this? Trump smirked. Now, tell me, do you still want $1? Or do you want to learn how to make 100? The man's breath caught. He hadn't expected this. He had only wanted a single act of kindness. But now, something deeper was unfolding, something he didn't yet understand. And at that moment, he realized that his life was about to change forever. The room was still. The torn pieces of the $100 bill lay scattered at Trump's feet. A stark reminder that this was no ordinary exchange. The man felt his throat tighten. He had expected rejection. Maybe even mockery, but this? This was something else. Trump leaned forward, his elbows resting on the table, his fingers steepled. So, what's it gonna be? He asked. The man hesitated, his hands clenched at his sides. He had struggled his whole life, facing rejection, prejudice, hardship. He had come here hoping for just one small act of kindness. A dollar that meant nothing to a billionaire but could mean everything to him. I don't understand, he finally said, his voice barely above a whisper. Trump smirked. Of course. You don't. That's the problem. The room felt heavier. The air between them crackled with unspoken meaning. Trump reached into his pocket again. This time, he pulled out a fresh, untorn $100 bill and placed it on the table between them. You asked for one. I'm offering 100. But not as a handout. The man stared at the bill, then back at Trump. What do you want in return? He asked, his voice laced with suspicion. Trump tapped his temple. I want you to think. Why did you come to me? Why do you think you need $1? Why not a job? A business? An opportunity? People don't need money. They need to know how to make it. But most people don't want to learn. They just want to beg. He leaned back again. So, are you a beggar? Or are you something more? The man felt his chest tighten. He wanted to be angry. He wanted to push back. To demand that Trump just give him what he had asked for. But something about those words, something about the challenge in Trump's tone, made him pause. He looked at the $100 bill again. It was right there. Within reach. But somehow, for the first time in his life, he wasn't sure if he wanted to take it.
Something deeper had shifted inside him.
And he didn't know what that meant yet. The man sat frozen, staring at the crisp $100 bill on the table. It was right there. Within reach. He could take it. Walk away. And never think about this moment again. But Trump's words lingered in his mind like an echo he couldn't shake.
Are you a beggar? Or are you something more?
His whole life, he had struggled. He had learned to survive. To take what little the world gave him. And to never expect more. But now, for the first time, he felt something strange, an uneasy realization that maybe he had been living in survival mode for too long. Trump watched him carefully. The smirk still playing on his lips. Well, he pressed. Take it. Or walk away. But if you take it, you better understand what it means.
The man's fingers twitched. And what does it mean? He asked hesitantly.
Trump leaned in, his voice lowering just enough to command attention. It means you'll always be the guy who asked for $1 when he could have asked for a chance.
A heavy silence filled the room. The man swallowed hard. He wanted to be angry. He wanted to push back. To say that life wasn't that simple. That not everyone had the luxury of opportunities falling into their laps. But deep down, he knew that wasn't entirely true. He had spent years believing that the world owed him something. That society had wronged him. That people like Trump would never see someone like him as anything more than a statistic. But here he was, being challenged in a way he had never expected. His hand hovered over the bill. And then, with a deep breath, he did something that surprised even himself. He withdrew his hand.
I don't want your money, he said. His voice steadier than before.
Trump raised an eyebrow. Clearly intrigued. No? The man shook his head. I don't want $1. I want to know what you would do if you were me. For the first time, the smirk faded from Trump's face. He studied the man for a long moment, as if re-evaluating him. Then, slowly, he leaned back in his chair, nodding slightly. Now, that's a real question, Trump said.
The energy in the room shifted. The game had changed.
And the night was far from over. Trump tapped his fingers on the table, his eyes narrowing slightly. He had expected the man to take the money and leave, most people did. But this one was different. He wasn't here for a handout. He wanted something bigger. Leaning forward, Trump finally spoke. If I were you, I wouldn't waste my time asking for $1. The man clenched his fists under the table. And what should I be asking for? Trump smirked. A deal. An opportunity. Something that turns $1 into 1,000. He sat back, adjusting his suit. You want to survive? Or do you want to win?
The man hesitated. No one had ever spoken to him like this. No one had ever dared to challenge him in this way.
I don't have the connections you have, he admitted. I don't have the resources. Trump scoffed. Neither did I when I started. But I didn't go around asking people for $1. I looked for ways to make something out of nothing. The question is, what do you have to offer? The man swallowed hard. What did he have? A lifetime of struggle? A mind sharpened by hardship? A determination to prove everyone wrong? He took a deep breath. I don't know yet, he admitted. But I'm willing to learn. For the first time that night. Trump looked impressed. He nodded slightly. Then reached into his pocket and placed a business card on the table. Good answer. Call that number tomorrow. Tell them I sent you.
The man stared at the card. He had walked in expecting $1. He was walking out with something far more valuable.
But what kind of opportunity had he just stepped into?
And at what cost?
The man's fingers trembled as he picked up the business card. It was thick. Embossed with gold lettering. No phone number, just an address. Trump smirked. Show up tomorrow. Or don't. Your choice. The man hesitated. Then shoved the card into his pocket. What kind of opportunity is this? Trump's eyes glinted. The kind that makes people cry for a different reason.
The next day.
The address led him to a towering glass building in the heart of Manhattan. The receptionist. An icy blonde in a fitted black dress. Barely looked up as he entered. Name? She asked. He hesitated. Trump sent me. Her expression didn't change. But she picked up a phone and murmured something. A moment later. A large man in a dark suit appeared. No name tag. No greeting. Just a nod. Follow me. The elevator ride was silent. The doors opened to a conference room with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Inside sat 3 men in tailored suits. At the center of the table, Trump himself. Trump leaned back. Watching him. You're here. Good. The man swallowed hard. What exactly is this? Trump tapped the table. A test. A folder slid across the polished wood. Open it. His hands felt clammy as he flipped it open. Inside, contracts. Legal documents. Financial statements. And then. His own name. Printed in bold. His breath caught. What is this? Trump grinned. Your future. The room felt smaller. The air heavier. He didn't know if he was being offered a dream or a nightmare. And for the first time, he wondered, had he made a deal with the devil? The man's pulse quickened as he flipped through the pages. Every document had his name, his real name, printed on it. Not just his name, but details of his life he had never shared. His childhood home. His estranged parents. His failed relationships. His criminal record. His biggest regrets. How do you know all this? He whispered. Gripping the papers. Trump steepled his fingers. Smirking. I know everything. The 3 men in suits remained silent. Their expressions unreadable. The air in the room felt colder. I asked for $1, the man said. His voice shaky. What the hell is this? Trump chuckled. Do you think I hand out money for free? He tapped the table. And the suited man to his left slid another document forward. This one was thinner. Just a single page. A contract. You want real money? Trump said. Sign this. The man hesitated. What's the catch? The suited man to Trump's right finally spoke. His voice calm and precise. Once you sign, you work for us. No backing out. No quitting. The man's hands grew clammy. What kind of work? Trump's grin widened. The kind that pays more than $1. The room fell silent. Outside, the city buzzed with life. But inside this high-rise office, the man realized he was standing at the edge of something deep, dark, and dangerous. And the worst part? He was tempted to jump. As the man's emotions ran wild, his heart raced faster than ever. He had never expected such a cold response from someone like Trump. Yet, deep down, there was a strange flicker of hope. A belief that kindness might yet break through. Trump's eyes were hard, almost unreadable. But there was something in the way he stared at the man that made him feel small. As the man stood there, struggling with his emotions, the room seemed to close in on him. The tension between them was palpable.
I never said I wouldn't help you. Trump finally broke the silence. His voice softer but still commanding. But the world doesn't work the way you think it does. The man's heart skipped a beat. Was this a change of heart? Or was this just another part of the game? He couldn't tell. As Trump turned his gaze back to the distance, the man began to feel something shift within him, something he couldn't quite grasp. But it felt like the beginning of an unexpected journey. In the silence that followed, the man couldn't help but wonder, what was Trump really trying to tell him?
The man stood there, feeling the weight of Trump's words lingering in the air. His heart was heavy, filled with confusion and a sense of disbelief. He had asked for something so simple. Yet the answer he received seemed to open up a flood of emotions he wasn't prepared for. Maybe you're right, the man muttered. More to himself than to Trump. Maybe the world doesn't work the way I thought.
Trump glanced back. His gaze not as hard now, but still distant. Sometimes, you have to fight for what you want. But be careful what you ask for. Not everyone can give you what you want. And sometimes, even if they could, it may not be what you need.
The man looked at him, searching for something. Anything that could make sense of this strange encounter. But all he saw was a man who had lived a life of privilege and power, disconnected from the struggles of people like him. Thanks. I think, the man said softly, feeling defeated but somehow understanding something he hadn't before. He turned to leave. But before he reached the door, Trump spoke once more. Wait, he said. His voice not as sharp as before. Maybe I can't give you $1. But I can give you something else. Something that might be worth more. The man froze. What could it be? What else could this powerful man offer him?
Trump stepped closer. His tone quieter now. I can give you advice. I can give you a lesson in how to make your way in this world. But it won't be easy. And it won't be free.
The man paused, weighing the offer. He had come here looking for charity. But now he was being offered something far more valuable, an opportunity to change his life. I'll take it, the man said, his voice steady with newfound resolve. I'll take your advice. And with that, a strange understanding passed between them. It wasn't. The man walked out of the room. Not with the $1 he had hoped for, but with something far more important, a chance at a new beginning.
The man walked out of the room, his mind racing with a mix of confusion and newfound purpose. Trump's words echoed in his head, I can give you advice. But it won't be easy. And it won't be free.
As he walked through the hallway, the heavy weight of the encounter began to lift. He had come into the room expecting sympathy. A simple handout. But now he felt like he was leaving with something more, something that could shape his future in ways he hadn't anticipated. The street outside was busy. Cars honking. People rushing to their destinations. Yet, the man felt like he was standing still, caught in a moment of reflection. He pulled his coat tighter against the chill of the evening air and looked around. He had spent so much of his life struggling, asking for handouts, for help, that he had never really taken a moment to think about how he could help himself. Trump's words weren't just about money, they were about empowerment. The idea of taking charge of his own destiny, instead of waiting for others to give him a chance, was something he had never truly considered. He realized that asking for $1 wasn't about the money. It was about acknowledging his own weakness, his own neediness. And Trump had just handed him the key to break free from that mindset. The next few days were a blur. He thought about the conversation constantly, replaying it in his mind, as if searching for more answers. He started looking at his life through a different lens. What could he do? What talents did he have that he could leverage? The small odd jobs he'd done before suddenly seemed less like desperation and more like stepping stones. He began to apply for real jobs, the kind he had been too scared to try before. His resume, which had once seemed like a list of failures, now felt like a map to new possibilities. Weeks passed. Slowly, things began to shift. He was hired for a part-time position in a local coffee shop. And although it wasn't glamorous, it was a start. It wasn't long before he began saving a little money, investing in learning new skills, and even enrolling in a night course on business management. One day, months later, the man found himself standing outside a new building, ready to meet with a potential investor about a small business idea he'd been working on. He was nervous, but confident. He knew this was his moment. The moment Trump's advice had led him to. Just before the meeting, he took a deep breath and thought about that night, the night he asked Trump for $1 and received something much more valuable. It was a turning point. A moment when he had stopped asking for handouts and started building the future he wanted.
As he entered the meeting, he felt the weight of that shift within him. No longer a man waiting for something to fall into his lap, but one who had learned to stand on his own and take what he wanted, no longer asking for just $1, but going for everything he knew he was capable of.
The meeting went well. And while it wasn't an immediate success, it was another step forward. The man now understood that real success wasn't about a single moment or a handout, it was about persistence, taking chances, and embracing change. And so, his journey continued, not with the expectation of receiving something for nothing, but with the knowledge that the greatest gift one could receive was the ability to take control of their own life. It wasn't an easy road, but it was one that he was now ready to walk, step by step, with the lessons he'd learned guiding him forward.